talking about climate responsive architecture. So you will find it as in continuation with what Meenal was talking in the last week as well. And also about a bioclimatic architecture. So there is a slight difference between the two. Uh, So climate responsive architecture is basically the design that utilizes the data on the region's weather patterns. So you need to understand the weather very carefully. Factors like seasonality, intensity of the sun, wind, rainfall, humidity. There are several elements that play an important role. Also, in terms of the building's energy usage, which is based on the site-specific conditions. And that's why we talk about incorporating the passive design techniques within the entire design process so that so eventually you start having a climate responsiveness to the entire project. The bioclimatic architecture is basically it's a sector of architecture that dominated by the principles of ecology and sustainability. So you will see it is more intending towards a biophilic architecture, or it is about wherein you ecology plays a very important role, where you try to create a design that aims at protecting the environment and the natural resources. It also talks about creating urban areas and buildings that are designed in order to fulfill the requirements of the fulfill all the energy requirements, and also without inducing a lot of environmental damage, or say a lot of a very good environmental footprint, or a larger carbon footprint. So this is just an example that I have taken from the last year's site, because the project was very site specific. So whenever you're looking at a climate responsive architecture, there is a certain kind of understanding that you need to know regarding the region. Now, what we understand is across the class, you will have selected sites which are in varied regions. So definitely the climatic conditions are going to change. Now, universally, there is a Copenhagen classification which has been used to understand the climatic conditions. Now, Copenhagen is very specific. People use it because within a larger, like a country like India, where there is a variation in climate, it gives you a very specific climate. So it really takes into consideration the entire geography and the topography of the place, and then give you the specific climate. And you will always have the climate, like CWB, AB, and things like that. Now, this is specific to Almora. So you need to understand what is the altitude in terms of how much you are above the sea level. What is the climate of Almora, which is in terms of the warm and temperate climate? What are the seasons like? Like the summers here have a good deal of rainfall. So which means the summers are pleasant, but at the same time, they are also moist or wet. While the winters have very little rainfall. So which means the precipitation is throughout the year. It's only the intensity changes. So definitely the kind of material that you use, the kind of thicknesses of your walls, and things that you will take as decisions matters. Then the climate is being classified as CWB as per the Köppen-Geiger system. And you need to understand the average temperatures, because these are the temperatures that you work with. There are certain kind of passive design techniques which will only work in a particular climate conditions. So your average temperatures, especially the day and the night time, matters, and as well as the precipitation matters, because it's the relative humidity. So the warm temperate climates are defined in the Köppen climate classification as having the coldest month, which is an average temperature of 18 degrees, but above -3 degrees Celsius. So this kind of a data you will get also for your own region. You guys can note down this website, meteoblue.com, meteoblue.com. It gives you a data. Okay, it also allows you to download the climate files in terms of temperatures, relative humidity. You can click wind speeds, whatever you want. The only thing is, only the 2 weeks data is free to download, but otherwise you will have to pay for it. But they have the entire histogram, which is a data which is like 100-year-old as well. So whenever you are doing any kind of simulations or analysis of the buildings, you require cumulative data. You can't just run it on like a last 10 years, because the climate has been also changing a lot, and there is a variation. So you need to make sure all your permutations and combinations are in place when you're testing certain kinds of built forms. Then comes the topography in terms of the hilly region, terraces, and the slopes. Now, Almora was very specific because it was higher in the altitudes. It is also in hilly region. There are terraces or slopes you need to understand, because if you are designing in a hilly terrain area, you need to understand how do you site your building well. Then comes the site context, where you understand the shadowing of the site by peripheral studies. So the density and the mass, like if you are in the urban area, there will be a lot of buildings around. And for example, you decide to put, to design a building which is totally off the grid, and you want to mount solar panels on your roof. Then you need to understand the shadowing on your site that comes, because solar panels exactly work like a tap. The moment you open the tap, the water runs, right? So similarly, if the solar panels is exposed to the sun's radiations completely, then they will generate the electricity. But in case there is a shadow that gets cast on the solar panel, it will stop generating the electricity. Okay, even the dust particles matter, because it reduces the efficiency of their generation of electricity. Then is the daylight obstruction and ventilation patterns become also important, especially in the dense areas, and especially when you have high rises around you, because what is the kind of daylight that you will draw within your building? Okay. Now, these are the kinds of diagrams you will be seeing on the internet, or you will be accessing through the books, or any kind of energy efficiency or bioclimatic or climate responsive architecture that case study you come across. You will find one is the windrose diagram. Okay, it just tells you the direction of the winds and the kind of velocity, so you can place your fenestrations of your building accordingly, whether you want to invite the winds or not. It depends on the climate which is there. Also, make sure that you don't design for a specific season. Your building has to run 365 days, right? So with specific seasonality, the building should be flexible enough to change and accommodate the changing climate outdoors. Then comes the average temperature and precipitation, which is in terms of the precipitation, mean, daily, maximum, it tells you. So here it is actually telling you the daily means, and the red one is telling you the highest ones. Now, if you notice, the difference is more than 10 degrees Celsius in both of them, which means you'll definitely go for a thermal mass technique. Okay, and all these passive design techniques we have talked about and we have discussed it in your earlier years, where in your first years and the second year. So this is one of the schools, which is one of the examples, which is a Druk White Lotus School in Ladakh. Now, I specifically chose this school to make you understand in terms of the materials. So your local materials becomes very important, because local materials are definitely going to help you to attain the passive techniques, and that's why they are being easily accessible in those regions. It's also the embodied energy becomes very less. Now, embodied energy is nothing but the energy consumed to create that material, and by the time it is being utilized on site, whatever energy is being uh, utilized, maybe to transport, to create that material, everything is adds up and create and makes an embodied material. Okay, embodied energy of the material. Now, that embodied energy of the material has to be less in any kind of a climate responsive or passive design technique. Also, if you look at the entire project, it's basically a school. So you will have spaces wherein in terms of the classrooms, and a lot of people, students coming together. So these are not individual units, but they are larger congregational spaces as well. Now, here in Ladakh, there were two things. One is the history of the flash floods, which happens, and the school was also affected by the flash floods. There were certain additions they had to do after the flash floods, and the second is the seismic activity that is there in the region. So the structure itself becomes very important in terms of how do you try and design the entire thing. Now, and the climate is very extreme as well. Now, these are the wind flow diagrams, wherein the entire site plan has been actually put upon the sun path diagram here, just to understand how the sun is going to interact with your entire built form. Okay, whether it's going to enter the buildings, whether you are trying to invite more sun, so that in winters you do require the sun to keep your entire space cozy and comfortable for the students. So they have actually looked at the March 23rd, June 22, and December 22nd. So these are actually the three things, because it also talks about the equinox, and that's why most of the readings that you will see will be referring to March 23rd, March 22, and December 22 degrees. And then you can actually see the shadowing pattern as well. Okay. Now, because we are higher in the altitude, it's also the altitude of the sun is right at the top. So you will never see that there are very deep shadows, wherein the altitude of the sun is lower comparatively. And then there is the wind flow diagram. Now, here the winds are going to be very harsh and very cold. So if you see, the orientation of the buildings is such that it is being inviting, but it's not inviting the entire wind breeze, and it's putting it's sorry, orienting the entire building built form in such a way that it brushes through, and there are these pathways which are being created for the wind. So also what happens is your buildings are applying lesser thrust to the wind pressure as well at the same time. Now, these are furthermore, explanations which talks about whether you want the morning sun. Now, in these kinds of climates where the sun is very harsh, in case you have experienced Leh Ladakh climate, you love to be in the sun because it's cold, but it is also burning hot. So it actually burns your skin if you expose your skin a lot to that sun. And at the same time, if you come for shade within a tree, after a couple of minutes, you will start feeling cold. Okay. So it's this kind of a weather that you're talking, and then you have to face that weather 365 days, or rather say, 11 months, because 1 month may be a vacation. It's a school there. Um, so then morning suns are very inviting, and it's very better. So that's why, how do you position your academic block? So you invite the morning sun, because you will have students inside the school early in the mornings, and they will start their entire day. So then, and what happens to the noon position? The noon position is actually being used to capitalize on the residential blocks, so that it acquires the heat throughout the day, but in the night when the temperatures are really low, it through the radiant heat technique, passive radiant heat technology, you just make sure yourself that the inside of the residential areas are cozy. So you actually align your activities, okay, as per the and the sun's movement. So this is the entire block. On the right hand side that you see are the dormitories with your and there is a secondary entry, there is a dining hall there. This is the entire central academic block, wherein you also have an amphitheater, which is this kind of a cylindrical space. Okay. These are the sections which are there. So if you see, it's all the thickness. Okay, the other reason is just understand the thicknesses of the walls and how the roofs are done. So this is also a very Ladakhi roof, wherein there is uh, a kind of a thickness as well as the materials. So there is timber as well as stone which has been used. Now, these timber frames are actually very helpful for them, and they are being braced in such a way that it can allow the sway in terms of the seismic activity, so that the damage to the structure is very less. And also, there is this particular black color that they use. The black color will resemble to the black body, which has the maximum capacity of heat absorption, and you require heat here. So if you see, it is also very traditional way that they actually highlight their beams. I'll show it in the later pictures which will come. This is the cross section which talks about how you want the daylight to come in. Because it's an educational space, you will definitely want a good reading light. Okay. And because it is running on passive, it is in these kinds of harsh conditions that you don't want to there is no grid electricity as such. There is, but then it becomes very expensive. So then you maximize on the daylighting as well. So then you have these kinds of clear stories, when you have this kind of a butterfly roof, and you create like a clear stories windows which can get in the daylight. Okay. And by the time it reaches your classrooms, which is much more diffused, and it's not a direct harsh sunlight which gives you a certain kind of a glare. And then there are these ventilation patterns depending on your summer day and your winter day. If you see, your winter day is basically very closed. So there are trombe walls. So there are very small openings which are there, and through which they take in the air. And then within it, the trombe wall treat treats the air. Like for example, if the temperature of the air is 4 degrees Celsius, by the time it moves through the Trom wall, okay, it will gain 4 degrees to 5 degrees Celsius and then enter the room. So it is always, and after you enter the room, there are other kinds of heating mechanisms which will help you to give a very comfortable indoor environment. But summertime, it's much more open. There is a cross ventilation that you create using like a stack effect. Now, this is the design of the Trom wall. So these are the small openings which are there internally, which is a high thermal mass. So look at the thickness. So guys, this is also important when you draw your own drawings. In case you are designing in a particular region, the thicknesses are not going to be conventional 230 or 150. Like internal walls have to be 150 and external walls 230. You need to understand, depending on the material, what should be the thicknesses. And if you are doing that, then there has to be a logical understanding as well in terms of increasing the thicknesses or using a certain material in a particular way. uh, so these are the openings which are at the lower and the above. Now this is a Trom wall, and on the right hand side you can actually see the bare framework of the Trom wall. So the below three openings that you can see, and there are top two openings which are there. Now this entire frame will be glazed. Okay, so you create like a heat space. So when you are during the daytime, it keeps ventilating because the sun is at its power. Okay, you don't want to you make your indoors very uncomfortable. But in the night time, you close it. Okay, and then this entire wall, okay, will be absorbing that entire heat, and then it will be this is the space in which actually the air takes the 4 degrees Celsius, changes from 4 degrees Celsius to your 8 degrees Celsius or 9 degrees Celsius, and then enters your space. You can see the kind of cross bracings that they have done, okay, which is important for the structure as well. These are few of the images, just exploded axo, which talks about how each and entire element of your building. On the right hand side, the metal bracing, the cables that you see are the additions after the flash floods that they've got, because there were certain frames which had got damaged, and because of which they have additionally added these braces. This is how the school looks like, and that's the quality of light which is there inside the entire room. Okay, which is very pleasant and very cozy at the same time. If you see, the flooring is also very wooden, and you will have carpets in the winters to keep yourself warm. The joineries, the way the joineries are being done, uh, in terms of the environmental systems, there they actually use the dry toilets. So there they don't have the conventional toilets, but what they have done is very smartly. They have this is the toilet block on the rightmost side, and the black metal sheet that you see is been facing the southwest, and it has been acquiring the heat, because of which it creates this siphonage action. So that's why there is a cross ventilation, and also the waste composting which is there. It doesn't give you the foul smell. Okay, all the foul smell is being uh, extra exhausted through these the stack that has been created. In terms of the ecology, will be a specific kind of a ecology that will exist in this region because of its climatic conditions. So during the summers, you will have these kinds of, like a garden which is next to your classroom areas, but in the winters they need to cover these and convert them into greenhouses. Now these greenhouses also gives you a particular kind of a buffer space from the extreme climatic conditions, and that's the black band that I was talking about. Okay, so the entire roof, which is also exposed to the climate outside, it absorbs in the maximum sun's radiation. So here you're inviting the sun actually, and that's why a lot of your design techniques are inclining towards those. So this is the small garden which actually aligns along the entire stretch of the classrooms which are there. And then look at the size of the openings which are there. There are two reasons. It's also large pieces of glass. It's very difficult to take up that terrain, okay, and travel it up there. So that's why they are smaller. And also the other reason is the climate, and you don't require so large openings there. You will always have to create smaller and controlled openings. Okay. Now we are shifting regions in terms of this is another example, North Point. It's actually been designed by, so the earlier Drukwai Total School was by Arup Associates, and North Point Khandala has been done by Vandana Ranjit Sin Associates, who is also visiting faculty at Kamla Raheja. This I love this project for the reason that it is basically done on a hill. So that is the site terrain which was existing. Okay, and this is how it looks like when the the site has been developed. The architects have been very sensitive towards how much is the cutting and filling that they are doing. What is the kind of you know a- buildings that you design and how much you're intervening with the greenfield site. So this is a completely greenfield site, untouched. And then how do you make sure your environmental impacts are lesser? The other thing is there have been two streams which were running across the site, and they were the sources of water for the villages below at the foothills. So it was extremely important that you make sure that those streams are not being affected because of your project. Okay. So this is basically done for the Deltas group. It's their outstation kind of space where they have a clubhouse. They have a lot of workshops and things like that here. Now this is how it sits right onto the uh, mountain. Now the terracing becomes very important, that how do you create the base for your project, especially when you're doing spaces like auditoriums or lodge or congregation spaces which are more in terms of halls or dining halls and stuff like that, which will have a larger footprint and they are not so small. So then how do you try and create these terraces? So your contour analysis becomes very important. In landscape, you'll be learning about the slope analysis, which will tell you which are the buildable slopes, which are the non-buildable slopes, and how do you try and create these different kinds of terraces to house your buildings well. So this is how the entire site lies, wherein below are these are your residential blocks. This is the entire institutional unit. There is this kind of a bridge that then joins the entire dormitories which are at the back. Okay. And your entry, this is your main entry, which is there, which is this building where you can see the small car there. And then there are series of steps which are there. And these on the right hand side, these are your sections and the elevations of how the building is being created. And definitely it's Khandala. That's why it's pitched roof, heavy rainfall. Okay. If you see, the windows are also recessed. These are few more, exploded agros just to see how the topography has been worked with. This is the amphitheater, which becomes the very interesting spot because it just opens out the entire, all these spaces open out into this courtyard. Because it's also an institutional space, it also looks at a lot of conglomeration spaces in terms of where students can hang out. There could be certain kind of social interactions and things like that. On the top of side, if you see, there is a different way the architect is designing the fenestrations. Okay, even if there are these heavy windows, but there is a way in which there are these horizontal members, which also adds to your architectural design language. The material expression becomes very important. They actually choose to run these kinds of white color bands, across the entire laterite stone, which has been used as a cladding material. There is a steel bridge which has been created, which they call it as the skywalk, because it's right on the top. So these are then there is these things like, because there are amphitheater and it's exposed and it's in Khandala, what you see below is these Shabat tiles. They are nothing but there is a drain below. So you tap the surface runoff right there. Okay, and then the water just doesn't gush out. So you can see there are these kinds of spouts which are also coming onto the Shaba tiled drains which are there. Then there are footlights which are being put in so that even in the night how to move through your site. Also the entire windows and things are recessed. If you see between the two columns, the light points are being put so they don't. So everything is very meticulously thought of. Okay, look at the eaves projection. What is the projection of the sheet compared to the fascia board? The fascia board, it just they have put in a slightly inside. On the left hand side, it just talks about how do you create these kinds of, and use ecology in creating an ambience for your entire architectural project. This is basically the dormitories, and these are the accesses. The staircase were designed in such a way that people can, all the students can hang around, wait, because that is the exchange that you have otherwise, right? Meanwhile, that you're going to your room or moving out of your room. That's the other view. On the right hand side, that's a very important image because that's the stream which is being kept intact. So even after creating such a larger footprint of the entire project, but they have made sure that the stream is being clearly intact. So there is this kind of a bridge which has been created, which acts like a corridor and spans between the two building blocks, and the stream runs right beneath it. So that's the stream that you can see that has been running, and that is the bridge. So this is actually, there are two images. On the right hand side where the door is, that's the stream and that's the bridge. And this is when you're on the bridge, you can see the stream. This is an aerial view of how the landscape is worked out. So it's not only about the building, but it also your building, immediate surroundings also matter. How do you design your outdoor space to create that kind of an experience wherein people really move, there is a transition between the indoor outdoor spaces. This is another project which is there in Meerut, Uttar Pradesh by Studio Teresa, which I liked is to do with the entire roofing system. So it is like any other conventional wedding hall. So the project brief was actually creating like a banquet hall, and the architects have actually designed it in such a way that they have created this. So this is the plan, wherein you have the entry on the right hand side, you have this entire larger building block, and on the left hand side along with the toilets you have the smaller kind of a dining area which is attached with this kind of a two smaller space which is there. So this is the section. So what the architect has done is actually they had created the double roofing system. So because it's in Meerut, okay, they can't really use a lot of glazing or any kind of translucent material, which will give you a certain kind of an ambience or certain kind of an experience, or even in terms of the daylight for an entire banquet hall. Uh, so what they did a double roofing system, and they have this kind of a proper space between the two which keeps ventilating the space. Okay, so these are the openings on the sides. Oh, okay, maybe, yeah. I'll just repeat that comment again when we see it. But then these are the openings which keeps ventilating the space between the outer shell and the inner shell. Okay, but what it allows the architect is to get a kind of an entire kind of a very dynamic roofing system for a banquet hall like this, which on the sides have these kinds of air conditioning systems in place, but it gives you a very plush feeling in terms of entire. It acts like a pavilion actually when it entirely opens up. Okay, and there is a certain kind of a within the tight space, the architect is able to create a certain kind of a greenery around it. uh, so these are the sliding folding, and it's cladded in wood, otherwise it's a metal framing. That's the ducting system that you can see on the outside, and then these are the inlets which are there. On the right hand side again, the way there are these kinds of in between seatings created. There is a small kind of a water pond which has been there. Yeah. So this is the night time. So there are certain kind of lightings which just gives you that particular dramatic ambience. Now on the right hand side, can you see these rectangular vertical windows? Now these are the windows which ventilate the space between the outer shell and the inner shell. Okay, and that becomes very important because in the summers you require it. You'll have to open it up, otherwise all the heat will get trapped and it will radiate that heat within your space. And when it's in its full capacity, it's going to exert a lot of pressure onto your air conditioning system that you have worked with. So this is the entire metal framework of the roof, and then the cladding. So this is on the right hand side. You can see actually the cladding of the roof, and you can actually also see the upper roof, which has been there. Okay. Which is also regarding the polycarbonate. So it has a polycarbonate thing, and that's why the transparency you can achieve, which is below. Okay. Now the next example is basically this is the De Montfort University in UK. And the De Montfort University is, I think it's been constructed in 1993. It's in Leicester. And it has the entire auditorium. There are two auditoriums which are 180 seats, and they're fully running on natural ventilation. And there are instances wherein they do fail and there are uncomfortable situations, but they are hardly anything with, if you compare it with the 365 days. But I think over a period of time, wherein they have conducted a lot of post occupancy surveys, and through which they have been able to achieve a lot of perfection in terms of creating thermal comfort within that auditorium. This is the section through the entire building wherein you can see the auditorium is being placed here on the right hand side just above the classroom. The other thing is that whenever you're designing the auditorium, a lot of times you feel that whenever you are doing the steps, below the steps, it's going to be a very dead space. It is up to your design how you design it and how do you make that entire space beneath your seating area accessible. So here they have put actually a classroom. Then they have this kind of an auditorium with a vertical stack, which is there. Okay. Then there are drawing studios, which are at the top. There is a laboratory, offices, and others. So, sorry, each of the auditorium actually has one stack or two stacks. Okay. So if you see the earlier, these are the stacks which are coming like wind towers on the top. So these become very important in terms of the uh, circulation pattern. Now here the fresh air is drawn in at the lower level beneath the seating rake, as you see, okay, which is coming from the external air from here. And the orientations of the two theaters lie in 180 degrees to one another. So that basically what happens is your inlet and the outlet positions are reserved. It doesn't affect your functioning of the entire auditorium. Also, what happens here is that regarding the post occupancy that they had created, they had conducted in 1997, they do talk about having a air change rate of 5, and that 5 air change rate works very well. Now air change rate is amount of the fresh air that you introduce within the built space. Okay. So that you have to constantly make sure there is a mixing of the fresh air. So whichever air conditioning system or HVAC system that you go for, ensure there is the system that you use gives you a particular advantage in terms of introducing the fresh air. The louvers that you see are actually the openings. These are the louvers that you can see right above these arched windows, okay, which are there, which are actually the ones which are where the raking system is. So if I have to compare, these are the louvers that you saw, okay, and these are the seatings, and through which they are been introducing the air. It is also listed at the Grade 2 building in UK, and that these are more images of it because it also comes as a so there is a lot of brick that they have used. There are a lot of additions which are also being done, because of which that they were only left with adding more openings at the seating areas, and they couldn't do it on the other side because there were these other corridors and stuff like that which was added as an addition to the building. Like for example, this is one of the corridor. So even if they had a potential orientation, okay, for air to get in into the auditoriums, they couldn't because these corridors and all were acting like a hindrance to them. The other reason is the amount of daylight that comes in. So your seating area is something that doesn't require light depending on the kind of performances you go for, or the what is the purpose of that auditorium. But otherwise the ancillary spaces are beautifully created, which also gives you a particular kind of an experience. Like for example, this entire corridor, there are these glass tiles at the floor, so there is kind of a daylight that actually penetrates through. It also has a railing which has an inbuilt seating area, so that it actually also allows you to wait before the performances are happening, or you can just hang around on this corridor, because it just gives you love the scale as well as the daylight that enters the entire building. This is the auditorium which is there, and actually the inlets are through this seating areas which is there. Okay, and then behind this entire screen is that shaft that you saw. I will go back to the section, just to this one, the shaft through which the entire air is being moved out. Okay, and it actually tells you what is the amount of meters per second. So this is the 2.2 meters per second which is there. Okay, but for the concourse and the drawing studio, it is 6 meters per second, because again, it's the volume of the air. Okay, it's also to do with the pressure differences that are created because there is a particular form. Okay, the concourse that we saw, or the bridge, was this one that I was talking about, and that these were the walls that you could see in that picture. This picture was talking about. Yeah. This is in another building which is called the Senate, done by Richard Rogers in Wales. It's actually the Welsh Assembly Hall. Uh, it doesn't have a raked seating, but what it has is a certain kind of an area which requires a particular acoustics. But also what they have done is they have created this kind of a daylight that comes in, which is indirect, and which actually enters this entire hall. And there are these glass. You can actually see the gap between the two glass panes. Okay, and this entire thing is cladded with timber. So this is how the entire building is being designed, and this runs on the mixed mode ventilation. So there is a time of the year which it runs on the VAV system, which is variable air volume system, and otherwise it also runs on the natural ventilation. So mixed mode ventilation becomes very important or very efficient, because you can switch your buildings depending on the climate outside. You can easily switch your buildings, and there have been sensors placed, and there is a switch over that happens automatically using the BMS system, and it just conserves a lot of energy, because it actually only utilizes the energy whenever it's required. Otherwise, it completely runs on passive design techniques. So that's the section. Like, the one is basically your assembly hall, and that is the kind of a funnel that you create on the top with a cowl, so that the rains are also being, you're being protected by the rains. But this is the kind of an entire funnel effect that you create for ventilation. So these are the different kinds of daylights that enter through your building, just because the way your form is being designed. And it also talks about how the reflection or the refraction happens. Okay, and how people start occupying the spaces which are there. This exactly talks about the daylight as well as the winter and the summer. So the summer is right at the top, okay, wherein the suns, and then how do you protect it? But at the winters, because you want the sun and it's lower in the altitude, there is a certain kind of a direct penetration of the sun within the entire space. Also, in terms of the VAV system at the below line that you can see, here also they are actually taking the inlets, okay, the heated air through the seating areas, because that becomes very comfortable. In terms of what happens, the mixing of the air becomes very easier, and in all stratified zones of your space, you will get a fresh air intake. Then they have, for the outer side of the cowl, they actually have this kinds of an opening in the roof, which is on the top. Okay. And then that also acts like a stack effect, which is there. And then they have the topmost cowl, which is there. So there is a windward direction that they have also showed, that how the entire, form works with the wind as well. Now, this is in another auditorium which is there, which is the Queen's Land University Advanced Auditorium. The entire thing was actually being opened in 2014. It's Hassel and Richard Crook Architects. It's 237,000 square feet of the auditorium. What I liked about the auditorium is that it has a very good facade, in terms of, your entire facade opens up when it's required, and it also shuts. So it gives you a dark environment as well as a very daylit environment as you want. And it absolutely engages with the, surroundings. And it doesn't become like a very introvert looking auditorium block, which is, doesn't have any kind of an correlation with the outdoors. Now, this entire, the best features are it's entirely running on passive design features. There is a real-time monitoring that they have been doing about this entire auditorium, and they have been using advanced engineering building wherein the structural and climatic performance is there. So it's a glue laminated timber which has been used across the project. It's a 500 seating auditorium, and it looks over this entire lake, which becomes actually your backdrop for this entire. So the slit on the black slit that you see on the top of the beam there, onto that elevation, is from where the screen rolls down. I'll be showing you images. The entire roof has also been created in such a way that it's created using trusses so that it spans the entire space which has been designed. These are the images of the screens wherein, the screen just rolls down, and that's the kind of space that has been designed. The roof is also very modulated so that your acoustics work in place. Now, this is the image which shows how the entire, on the right hand side, if you could see, the entire vertical wooden members have shut itself. So there is no exchange, visual contact between the outdoor indoor. Neither there is any kind of a light that intervenes with your indoor space. This is the image while constructing. So you can see that there is this kind of an RCC wall, which is these are the entire glue laminated timber, the glazing, and then the way the truss sits on it, on this entire space that is designed. That's the section across, which is there. So I do have a design detail of this. So these have been using, they are using gusset plates, and then they are also using these nut and bolts to create these kinds of joineries which are going across. So these are the glue lamp cords and beams which are fastened together using 1-inch galvanized steel bolts grouped with 16 mm steel plate cleats and boxes and 5 mm thick washers. So these are the sizes that they have been working with. Uh, this is actually the entrance to the entire hall. Even the lightings have been designed in a particular manner. There is a certain kind of other lights which are there. Can you see the glass pieces which are also indirect lighting systems itself? So depending on what is required, you utilize it. The uniqueness of the floor is such that more than 13,000 square feet of the flooring is being constructed by using a recycled Eucalyptus purulalis. That is the species that is being found there, and they have recycled that entire stuff. The entire roof is 3,000 metric ton, and it's been manufactured by Hind Timber, which has actually been acquired 160 miles up the coast in the city of Maryborough. So, which means, here the architects or the entire design team has been looking at the embodied energy as well. Uh, and it actually gives you a 40% reduction in annual energy performance, which means that 183 days in the year, it's been running on naturally ventilation. So this is the section which actually talks about the local hardwood glue lamp, okay, which is the beam there. Then there is a local hardwood glue lamp truss cords, which is 3 here. And then there is a fascia board, there is a roof cladding. So these are the kind of detailings which are also expected from your end for your project. I will just play a small video. I hope you all can hear.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. Uh, so these are few of the slides which also talks about the other, in terms of examples, which talks about how daylight can interact with your ancillary spaces, or in the corridors or the passages that you create, which head you yourself towards the entire auditorium seating area, or your foyer space, or your lounge areas that you've created. This is in Tal Salo by Arvela Alto, which talks about how the staircases, are being daylighted. And again, it is also a kind of an assembly hall wherein uh, you know uh, you can see the ceilings which are being created. There are skylights which are also being designed, and then there are these drop ceiling sorry, light fixtures which are there. So everything is being very sensitively designed and worked towards. The other is basically it's a school by Samira Rathod Bhadran, which uses a lot of brick tiles and have these skylights within the corridors and spaces. So she shifts scales as well as the amount of daylight that enters, and then it creates a kind of a dramatic, ambience for your entire spaces. Then these are the classrooms, which has these kinds of where the jack arch, the way the roof, like jack arches, its floats, and then you suddenly move the entire one module up and create this kind of a weight for the daylight to enter in. Definitely, there will be shadow patterns that as well that you work with. These are the other two examples, which is one is the Herzog the Muron, the Dominus Winery, where he uses the dry Gabin wall, and whatever light that enters through the Gabin wall creates this kind of a pattern onto the flooring. And every time it changes, because depending on the incident of the sun's radiation, the patterns are going to change throughout the day. But it just gives you a different kind of a feeling, and also it just lifts up the entire atmosphere of that entire process, and people start interacting with these spaces very differently. On the right hand side is Tadao Ando's project, which is basically also talking about the different amounts of daylight that is entering this kind of a very narrow corridor, and how just by sensitively tackling the light, you can change the entire, even if your corridor is tight because you have with the limited space, how do you accentuate that or utilize to your own potential, as a positive thing for your design, so it adds an element of experience, an element of, a feel to that entire project. Yes, thank you. I think I'm done. Any questions? Uh, I hope I just mentioned that the Queensland building is done in Brisbane. It's in Australia. Uh, any questions? Anyone?
I have some comments to make, but wait till the students finish with some of the
Okay,
queries. Then,
I can
otherwise, it
start
was nice.
sharing, right?
It was nice. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mm.